pedal in the lane, moving fast, ayy, ayy. Let them all cross. If they hate, then let them hate and make a bigger boss, ayy.
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? We are back. We are live. It is the Freight Coach Podcast, the top podcast in transportation, coming to you guys every single weekday, 8:30 a.m. Pacific, 10:30 Central, to break down some industry headlines. But most importantly, you guys provide some actual insight into what you can do with all of this information. This is your first time tuning in. Welcome. This is the real side of freight, ladies and gentlemen. And I do say that before every single show. And what I mean by that is I only speak with transportation professionals, because at the end of the day, I want to talk to the right individuals who have done what you're looking to do or who are currently doing what you're trying to achieve. So you can take that information, apply it, utilize it, and see a meaningful difference in your business and your life. Happy Monday, everybody. We are rolling solo today. So what we're going to be doing, we got our market report. We also have 3 industry headlines that we're going to be breaking down. As always, all the links to the articles will be uploaded into the show notes after the show. And also one more thing, you guys, we do drop a weekly newsletter. And I don't auto-sign my contact list up to that. So if you're like, Chris, we've been emailing back and forth for years, but I don't get it, it's because I don't auto-sign it up. I want you guys to want to receive it. So if you do want to get in on it, it just drops on Wednesdays. I need you to go to thefreightcoach.com. It'll auto-prompt you to register. Again, it's easy to opt in. If you don't want to get in anymore, unsubscribe. It's just another thing that we put together, you guys, for those of you who can't tune into the show all the time. We talk rates and their fuel prices, and then we just do a weekly synopsis on kind of what's going on in the market. And yeah, but with that being said, you guys, we're going to jump into my favorite segment, which is This Week in Freight, powered by my friends over at DAT. Again, you guys, this is 100% viewer submitted. If you want to email me your lane, it's just email podcast@thefreightcoach.com. I need shipping city, delivery city, trailer type. Round up to the nearest big city if you think I'm using this for business development, which I'm not. I pay for the best business lead generation software that's out there. I don't need any of that. I just want to help you guys learn how to actually read freight markets. It's easy to get caught up on headlines and social media posts from people who aren't actually moving freight, nor have they moved freight, nor are they ever going to move freight. Because just because one thing says, one piece of data says one thing, doesn't mean that the market's falling apart. There's a lot more stability out there than people want to admit. And I'm not trying to sell you guys a product here, right? There's no Freight Coach rates or anything like that. If you guys, most of you guys already use DAT at the end of the day. This is just what I personally do to break down freight markets. So today it is a drive-in. It is Fresno, California to Salt Lake City, Utah. Now, the first thing, if you've never quoted out a load before, you guys, the first thing I always pay attention to is miles, because that drastically affects the rate. And if it goes, depending on the days of the week that this is going to ship, this is a great Monday through Wednesday ship date because it can obviously deliver by Friday. You probably would see a higher rate for a Wednesday to Friday delivery on this than you would Monday, Tuesday. And that's just because the outbound Salt Lake market has always historically been bad in regards to freight volume, in regards to rates. Rates have been historically lower out of there than other parts of the country. And it's been that way since I've been moving freight. So none of that has changed out there. And, one little trick that I personally do, you guys, when I'm moving in and moving a lane, whether it's a consistent lane that I'm doing all the time, or if this is a new lane that I've never touched before, I always like to check the inverse market. What do I mean by that? I'd flip it around. What's outbound Salt Lake going back to Fresno look like from a pricing standpoint? And if that is quite lower than normal, then you know that your rate going into Salt Lake is going to be more expensive. And that's just because the opportunities coming out of that market are less than where they're coming out of, right? So just do that. And, you can apply that strategy to any lane in the United States. I do that all the time. I want to see what that outbound market is looking like because I want my drivers to make money. And if they're going into a market that is, say historically bad, you're going to see a higher rate going into that, right? And that's just another thing that you can explain to your customers as you're bidding out freight, right? Like, hey, we're higher on this lane because outbound Salt Lake, outbound Denver, historically very, very soft. So freight's limited coming out. That's why people charge more going into those markets. But as you guys can see, this is going up. All right. This lane has gone up. Again, this ties directly in with increase in fuel prices. And I know fuel prices have gone down, but if you live out west like I do, they haven't gone down out in California. They've barely gone down here in Arizona compared to the rest of the country. So that is why you're seeing a lot of those spikes in rates. But again, you guys, if you're following this, look at this trend last year, although it was a lower price point, was raising June, July, August out there. And then it kind of tapers off in September and October through November. And again, just because there's a higher price point this year doesn't mean that the market's going to perform any different. So I would expect that to follow that trend line. And the data is already backing up. I mean, we're essentially midway through July, and it's stabilized out there. So pay attention to that as you're going in bidding on this stuff, because again, we got to bring stability into our customers no matter what. You cannot sell on fear. You cannot sell on that there's a shortage of anything. They're looking for you to actually show up and perform for them. And this lane, I'm not saying that it's not going to be volatile. I'm not saying that it isn't going to increase certain, from a pricing standpoint at certain times. But at the end of the day, you guys, we got to find that stability that is out here. And we need to legitimately bring that level of calm out there to our to our customers, because outbound California, there is always a plethora of capacity. Just depends on what you're going to pay. Sometimes, Friday afternoon is never going to be cheaper on this lane. But again, if you're looking at this, most importantly, we want to find the stabilization factor here. Okay. So last year, look at the way that this market performed, this lane performed. Just because the rate's higher doesn't mean it's not performing on the exact same basis in regards to finding that stability point and delivering that consistency down to your customer. So this lane, I could see it raising up a little bit because outbound California over the summer, it's historically been more expensive, and it can continue to do that. But at the end of the day, you guys, there's going to be times where you're going to have to eat it for your customers. I'm not saying don't make money, but service over everything, especially right now when most people are selling on volatility and everything else. So this lane is Fresno, California to Salt Lake City, Utah. I would expect it to stabilize. It might go up a little bit out there, but at the end of the day, there's going to never be a shortage of capacity on that lane. Just as in any lane out there, you guys, just depends on what you're going to pay. So that's This Week in Freight, powered by my friends over at DAT. Fresno to Salt Lake for a drive-in. If you want your lane broken down on the show, you guys email my team, podcast@thefreightcoach.com. Corey Buchan says rates were going down in Montana, and now they're starting to climb up again. We're seeing that as well out here, man, where in a lot of the lanes that we were running, the 4th of July was fortunately pretty stable overall from a pricing standpoint. They dipped a little bit early part of last week, but we're starting to see rates kind of creep back up there, at least on the open market, right? Like a lot of our core carriers have kind of been the same now for the last 60 days. They know they could get more money on the spot market, but they also understand the our customers' freight mix with them, and they enjoy getting loaded quick and unloaded quick out there, because 90% of my shippers and receivers are all first come, first serve. So they can all stay on site or nearby. But let's see here. Other than that, you guys, there's it's kind of been pretty muted overall from a big headlines perspective, which I think is always a good thing out there. But from what we're going to be talking about today, there are some things that have been going on at the federal level. The whole ICE situation in non-domicile CDLs and non-English speaking drivers and stuff like that. It's not going to go away anytime soon out there. But let's dive into the first article today, you guys. It is from freightwaves.com, and it is federal agents are targeting illegal truck drivers at weigh stations nationwide. If you watch this show, you know that that's something that I said that they should be doing like months ago, right? And that was more along the lines of with the English language proficiency. And again, it's easy for me to say this because I'm not a driver, but I was more saying from like an optics standpoint, it would just be easier to assess any and all drivers. It doesn't matter if they were born here or not, because if the true end game was just to remove people who were illiterate from the road, I thought that going to the scales was the most effective way to do it. And then especially when you remove prejudice from it, because a lot of the media right now loves to talk about that it's just that driven. That's the best way to do it. And it's good to see that they're out there on the scales, right? Because they got to get creative with this. And this just goes, for me, this is for anybody who is not here the right way. All right. Like there are plenty of people. I'm not even against, like with work visas and everything else, as long as they're following the law, that's the way that it should be, right? But to me, it's like we got to get anybody who's exploiting loopholes, just like with freight theft, just like with double brokering, all of that, close the loopholes, level the playing field. I just want everybody who shows up to do the work to be held to the exact same standards as the ones who are doing it the right way. And that's just why I think it's a good idea for them to go out there and get at it from this level. So the federal government has aggressively escalated roadside enforcement by deploying ICE agents directly to commercial truck weigh stations. Working in tandem with state troopers, federal agents are identifying and apprehending unqualified drivers who fraudulently or illegally obtained CDLs. Again, keyword, fraudulently or illegally obtained CDLs. All right. Just put that out there. This sweeping initiative follows several high-profile fatal crashes involving unqualified operators and addresses an estimated pool of a couple 100,000 non-citizen operating with illicitly secured state credentials. Again, I think that legally obtaining a non-domiciled CDL from the DOT is vastly different than an illegally or fraudulently obtaining a CDL, i.e., it's not a real one. Concurrently, the Department of Transportation is strictly enforcing longstanding ELP mandates, placing any driver out of service who cannot adequately comprehend road signs or communicate with inspectors. For me, it's good to see because this is like a nationwide. Obviously, you can probably follow the party lines on what states they're doing this in. But it is not a localized audit. Federal data targets, blah, blah, blah. Hold on. Over 28,000 licenses has already been rescinded, threatening. I don't think it's going to tighten up the driver pool and incapacity pool. I think there's a big difference between, because it's like I look at this when they're like, the 28,000 number, right? Like let's use that. Were they even in the database that's out there? So are we actually removing 28,000 drivers from the reported capacity pool? I mean, I'm not saying that they weren't out there driving trucks because they were clearly driving trucks, but from the legitimate driver pool that's out there, I don't think that we're going to see a dip in capacity by any stretch of the imagination. Again, I'm sure somebody has a counter argument to that, but if you look at that, I think that we're not talking about individuals who are doing things the right way, which those are the ones that we want in any role out there, especially ones driving down the freeway like that. And then it does obviously, like I had said, sanctuary cities, sanctuary states are probably not doing that. And again, follow party lines. I'm sure there's people on the right that aren't enforcing this either. Let me see here. I think that doing what they're doing, though, kind of like what I was talking about earlier, like this is the best way to do it, right? Because, again, you don't even want people who legally obtained a CDL who are going to dodge the scale because they know that immigration is on. Like, you don't want them on the road either, right? Like, we want ethical operators moving down the freeway out there. And it does talk about the English lane of the ELP English proficiency enforcement that they have. That like they're just no longer being lenient with it, right? And under the new guidance that a driver's inability to speak or read English well enough to understand signs and complete reports is a mandatory immediate out of service violation. I completely stand behind that. But again, I hope that they're going to do that to everybody, right? Because I would assume that there might be some people out there who look like me, who might be illiterate, that might be driving trucks, right? And again, I don't want anybody who can't read road signs. I don't care if you're born here, but again, standards are a standard. Standards are a good thing. And if we're going to go after the talking point alone of somebody's inability to read and speak the language, shouldn't matter if you're born here or not. If you cannot read or read the road signs or write and you're illiterate, you shouldn't be operating heavy equipment. I don't care how long you've been doing it, right? Like, again, standards are a good thing. And then, again, obviously a lot of people want to point to the politics of this. I think it's important to note, though, that all of these rules that they're enforcing now were not implemented by the current administration. These have been in place. All right. This is just called enforcing the law. And there's just so much selective outrage that you can see out there from both sides of the aisle, right? Like this isn't a left or a right thing. It's both sides of the aisle. They selectively like to pick apart when rules are being enforced. And I think that, again, if we're talking about safety, like I think that is the main thing about it. That's why I say that if they're going to be out there in the scales, they should be doing a quick audit of everybody. And I feel like that's going to close the door on a lot of potential prejudice and bias that is out there. And I think it's just the easiest way to do it. But again, what am I? Who am I? I think also, especially with a lot of things coming out about carrier selection strategy and everything else, I think that it's going to be interesting to see what could happen from like a claim standpoint here. Like say the shipper went direct to a carrier who double brokered the load, or they knowingly were loading a fraudulent carrier, because you can't tell me that there are people out there on the shipper side of things, just like there are on the broker side of things, that are knowingly loading fraudulent operations. Like I'm not that naive. I was born in the day, but I wasn't born yesterday. It's going to be interesting to see though what comes down, especially with recent rulings out there, who's going to get drug into this stuff, and what is going to happen if you are caught hiring unqualified drivers in that pool. I still think it's too early to tell. Like I've always said from the beginning with the broker liability thing, I'm waiting for the next case to come down. It's going to be really interesting to see that. But, I just look at it because you need to constantly audit who you're working with. I think it is very evident at this point. You need to constantly audit who you're working with. If you're a shipper or a manufacturer and you're booking somebody direct out there, you might want to start auditing them if you never have. Just like with brokers, if you've been working with people for a long time, it's a tough thing to deal with. But like, I also look at it that you need to be constantly vetting and auditing your network, and making sure that everybody is up to date. And I don't know what that parameter is, right? Like Cassandra Gaines put out a big thing about this. And I think she just recently released an article too. I saw you can follow up on her. Brian Nelson, he's one of the attorneys I have on the show often. He talks about this a lot as well, you guys, about what you should be doing to audit your current network that's out there. And I think it's, again, it's still too early to tell, but I look at with what this footprint is doing, this administration is doing by getting out there, getting on the scales, doing that, getting boots on the ground in that aspect, I think is a very solid way to combat a lot of this, because again, I also look at it like this. Does this deter people when they see this, right? Like they see these articles and now they're going to see people getting put out of service. Does this deter them from even wanting to drive anymore, right? It's like if they know, like, I'm not going to pass any of that stuff. Or, again, I look at it, just the mere presence of it, I think is going to be a positive over the long term. Because again, I just want people who are doing things legally and like held, into high standards. I want them to be rewarded out there. I don't want loopholes of any kind out there for anybody, because I think that it puts the right people out of business who are doing the right thing. And anything to deter a lot of that behavior, I think is a very good sign. It's a very good sign. I truly do. But that article was from freightwaves.com. Federal agents targeting illegal truck drivers at weigh stations nationwide. Now another one, because this is everybody's favorite topic to talk about, and that is broker margins, rate transparency, and everything else. This article is from Overdrive Online, and it is TQL to argue before U.S. Court of Appeals over broker transparency. This article came out a couple of days ago. I didn't see it, but and then this is going to be in September is when they're going to be doing this. And TQL will have to make oral arguments in the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit on September 11th of this year in a case brought by Pink Cheetah, the owner-operator who for years has demanded broker transparency documentation from the mega broker. This follows a lower court, the District of Columbia, the District Court for D.C. ruling in TQL's favor and dismissing Pink Cheetah's case. The case at the heart confronts whether a November 2023 email from the FMCSA telling TQL to drop contractual waivers blocking carriers from requesting rate transparency documentation constitutes a binding order. This lawsuit, it is Pink Cheetah Express versus Total Quality Logistics, TQL, centers around federal regulation. It's 49 CFR 371.3, which mandates that brokers retain transactional records, including the exact compensation paid by the shipper, and disclose them to the transacting carrier upon request. After a single load audit revealed TQL retained what they call a massive 44% margin compared to the customary 14 to 16% broker average. TQL cut off communications and cited its standard contractual language, which forces carriers to waive their transparency right. The appellate court will determine whether a broker's private contract boilerplate can legally override. So again, when we're talking about broker transparency, and, again, although everybody loves to rip on TQL for a lot of this stuff, but, I look at with where this is at right now, again, they like the 44% margin. I don't know I haven't pulled all the records on a lot of this stuff, but, again, there is an inverse to this, right? And I'm just speaking more in like broad terms. I'm not talking specifically about this case. I don't see anybody complaining when we lose money on loads, right? Like that's never talked about. We want to talk about an anomaly situation where, if somebody made 40% or 35% on a load, whether they're talking about a full truckload or an LTL, right? Like just for simple math, if you charge your customer $200 to move a pallet for an LTL load and the carrier charges you $120, like, it's a pretty fucking big margin, right? But we're talking about $80, right? So again, data can skew things in one direction or another, but what's never talked about is the tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars brokers lose on freight every single month. And when they do talk about it, the response has always been, well, you should have quoted it better. Okay, I wish it was as easy as that, right? I just don't understand what somebody makes on a transaction. Again, a transaction, if you look at the overall life cycle, so say somebody made 30% on one load, but the 12-month rolling average was 12%. Didn't they make 12% overall as opposed to that one transaction? And again, I know there are people out there who it does not matter what I say. All brokers are thieves. All brokers are criminals. We're all the scum of the earth. All we do is steal from everybody. And again, I know that there's a camp out there who feels that way. More power to you. But I also look at when we're looking at this, right? Like the enforcement of this, if you waived your right to this in the onboarding process, again, there's going to be things that come down from this. But again, if you waive your rights, like, again, I will say this is the importance of reading contracts that are out there. And to the brokers, for example, I think now that the tides have turned, you're going to start to see some rollbacks on some of these requirements, unfortunately, because it's not there yet, but it's going to come down to the point where a carrier is going to look at your onboarding process or look at some of these things, and they're going to be like, dude, I'm not going to haul your freight. There's way too many hoops to jump through when I can work with this other broker who doesn't. And I'm not here to argue about what's right or wrong. Like, you need to have a selection standard. You need to adhere to those standards. But I think that there's some downfall from this where, I don't know if it's as big of a threat to the brokerage model as a lot of people want to think. Like, they truly think that this is going to change the name of the game. Again, if you want a good pulse for what the average broker makes on a load, all of the brokers that are publicly traded, you can look at their 10K, all of their profits, losses, all of that are public data. And I can guarantee you this. If some of those public companies that are out there and I are moving freight for the same customer, there is a 0% chance they're going to play a publicly traded company a 12% margin and me a 50% margin. There is a 0% chance that that's going to happen. All right. Not over the long term by any means is that going to go on. You're just going to lose out on the loads. Why would they go with broker B, who is exponentially more expensive than broker A, who can get it in line at that 12%? But, you know, I look at with where things are with this one, and you know, it's going to be interesting to see. I think, you know, the TQL has deep enough pockets where they will run this up to the Supreme Court. That's out there. I don't know. Let me backtrack. I'm not involved in this at all. This is just pure speculation, but I would assume that they have deep enough pockets to want to take this all the way up to the Supreme Court if it boils down to it. But, you know, again, if we're looking at your P&L, for example, you know, and you're using a dispatch service, I would be checking them on, you know, if you're a carrier or an owner operator and you are using a dispatch service, I would be checking them on what they are actually telling you the load pays compared to what the broker is paying, you know, being agreed to. I have been told countless times in my career when they're using this more for dispatch services than not, don't tell the driver what we're being paid on this load. Okay. So take that into consideration. If you do not see the rate confirmation from the broker to your dispatch service, that would be a red flag if you are using the dispatch service, right? Because we're not doctoring any documents when we're sending that out. All right. So I would start there. If you're using a dispatch service, see what is the broker actually paying, because maybe we're paying an agreed upon rate of, say, $2,000, but the dispatch service is only telling you that we're paying $1,700, and then they take that $300 plus the 6% fee or whatever booking fee that they're being charged out there, right? I would personally start there. Again, I'm not saying there aren't shitbags. Okay, there are shitbags on every side of this industry. There is no denying that. But if you're going to look, I would look there first and then go downstream. Okay, because I know firsthand, because I actually move freight, the amount of dispatch services that will say, don't talk about the rate to the driver. I would assume that if I'm paying them $2,000, they're only telling you we're getting paid $1,700. They're lowering that. And then if you don't have access to that rate confirmation from the broker, I would start demanding that. Again, I don't know everybody's operation. I would say that would be a logical first place to start out there. But that is going to be it for today, ladies and gentlemen. That article was from overdriveonline.com. Again, if you guys like, the links will be uploaded into the show notes there. But that's going to be it. As always, if you got value in what you heard and you're not subscribed, subscribe to the show, you guys. And if you're feeling ambitious, rank that show on iTunes and Spotify, because if you see value, your network's going to see it as well. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys. And we'll be talking to you soon.
Came back with a bang. Window down, yelling out money, anything. Hey, ooh, got the foot on the gas. Pedal to the metal when I'm getting to the